Hi, and welcome back to This Truth. I am Alan Prennup on this Wednesday, October 8th. A couple things in the news going on in the country that I wanted to get off my chest and talk a little bit about. Um, it's been a little bit since I've made a video and came out and talked to everybody. With that being said, jumping right into it, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, addressed the top brass across all military branches, some 800 ranking officials. And I have to tell you, I think his address was spot on. I agree with everything he said, and reason for that is our military definitely has to be at a much higher level than all of us, where code and uniformity, physical fitness and health all are very key factors in having a very effective military. With military scattered throughout my family, my friends, their kids, former and current clients, customers, plenty of military that I've been around. I didn't have the opportunity to serve myself. Health condition prevented that, or I would have. I wanted to. I tried, but they said no. So with that being said, everything that he talked about in his 45 some odd minute speech about physical fitness, shaving, um, leadership not being overweight, uh, long hair. Well, depending on your where you are at in the military, depends on your personal grooming. But physical fitness, absolutely. If you're leadership, I fully believe in leading by example. Should we have a different standard of PT for generals and admirals? I don't know. I'm not in the Defense Department, the War Department, as it's called now, so I can't really speak with any type of authority. But I can't expect somebody 65 years old being held to the same standard as somebody that's 20 years old, man or woman. It doesn't matter. Just the body just can only take that level of intensity for so long. So, but I think there needs to be something. I really think there does need to be a standard of physical fitness for our brass leadership. And there was a video that I saw, a kind of a snippet online the other day. National Guard exiting a vehicle in one of the cities they've been sent to, and they kind of look like me. They've got hair. Uh, they got their fair share of table muscle sitting above their belt, just like me. Those are civilian soldiers. They lead a civilian life, and they only get called up, when things are necessary like this. So understand, but even at that, I think the National Guard, they should be able to meet that standard as well, because they're getting short-term notice, same as reservists. You're getting short-term notice. You might get some training ahead of a deployment, or it might be something like this where you have to report in just a couple days and get shipped out to a city or the border or what have you, depending on the needs of the country. So I think they should definitely be able to meet the mark of the physical fitness standards. And another reason that, if put yourself in a combat zone, you got somebody to your left or your right, and if you get injured or some way incapacitated due to some type of enemy fire, IED, mortars, etc., whatever the case may be, you've got to have the full confidence that that teammate next to you can do what's needed to help get you to safety. And if they weigh half as much as you, and you're 2 and 3 times stronger than they are, it was like, okay, well, that might not happen, which therefore puts them in even more danger, because now they're struggling to get some big body out of there, and it's tough. So I'm not saying women can't be on the front lines of combat, but we've got to do the pairings appropriately, to make sure that the person to the left and the right can fulfill the duty, of whatever is needed, in support of their teammate. So it's the same thing with football. You got somebody that's 145 pounds as a free safety. You're not going to put them on the line. No, that's they're in a rear position for a reason because they're light in the britches. So another thing he spoke about was, he said, direct quote, and I don't like quoting it, is dudes in dresses. Okay, I get it, and whether you classify that as an identity should be accepted in the military, or the gender ideology, like I said, personal identification. It's the military that's a uniform standard and code when it comes to who that service member is and what they are doing. Now, you can prefer anybody you want to in bed. I don't have any disagreement with that, but it can't put your fellow team members, service members, sailors, etc., in jeopardy because of that. And if you are one of the persons that consider transgenderism a mental health disorder, I would beckon the medical community, especially within the military, to make that determination. I'm not a doctor. I can't make that determination if it's a mental disorder or not. But I know I had a friend that had one of their kids enter the National Guard, and they didn't make it through basic or recruit training, whatever they call it in the Guard. They got sent home for medical due to anxiety. So okay, well that's awfully minor, but so if anybody is able-bodied enough and can meet those uniform standards and codes and physical fitness, I think they should be able to serve. I really do. The trigger doesn't care who's pulling it. The buttons don't care who's pressing them. The reports don't care who's writing them, and the enemy certainly doesn't care who you are. Their goal is to kill us before we kill them. So that's about all the opinion I've got. I'm not in the military, not even adjacently. Like I said, I can't speak with any authority on it, but you can't live and act as a civilian in the military. Like I said, it's got to be a much higher standard. And when I think about our military, our men and women in uniform, I picture them being total badasses. And I would hope that everybody else would, because the goal is to protect and defeat the enemy, to protect the homeland and defeat the enemy, which is to do us harm. And I'm very, grateful that we have such a great military in order to provide that security and to provide backup for our allies. So, because we've got somewhere around 800 bases across the planet, and so we're everywhere. Not to mention our fleets in the open seas. So, I agree with Secretary Hegseth. I really do. And if it's uniform code and it's been laxed in its enforcement, we don't need lax enforcement in the military when it comes to standards. We really don't. Same as police departments, sheriff departments, fire departments, paramedics, anybody like that. We can't compromise on codes and standards because the risk is just too great. So if you want to serve, sign up, give it your all. I wish I could have, but not. Now, President Trump did speak right after him, and I was a little disappointed in his speech. I figured since he was going to be addressing the who's who across the military, the top leadership, that it would have been not a typical Trump speech. Well, it was a typical Trump speech, and there was a comment about military kind of getting practice in our cities. Well, yeah, well, I don't know if I like that or not. I don't want our military practicing on our citizens, whether they're criminal citizens or not. I don't really like that. However, you can only go through simulated training so much. And that just might be one area where Well, you're not going to get the appropriate training unless you're in a combat zone in a city. I would rather them not participate in trainings uh, within our cities. But if he's got the idea, if for some reason he's got the idea, I'd like to hear him expand on that idea. But I don't know how well. I don't know how well that's going to go over. Yeah, there's certain trainings that we can do, domestically, but if it's going to be practicing on our citizens, we're not training our military for law enforcement. We're training them for peacekeeping and combat. So it's a bit different. Now, the ICE raids, we're going to segue right into that. The ICE raids and the protesters, rioters, demonstrators, Antifa, however you want to call it, in Chicago and Portland are all over my news feed, no matter what social media I go to, no matter what news outlet I go to, it's everywhere. And I've heard several city leaders, different cities, leaders in different cities, talking about sending us money or, reactivating grants. Like, well, you've had the money, you've had the grants, and the problem's not getting better. So, boots on the ground is what you're getting. So, if money was going to solve it, I think Congress said, "Hey, we don't need to go there. We just need to give them $100 million, and it'll fix it." A lot of our city leaders, in major urban areas, have issues with finance management, and we've seen that in multiple cities in multiple states, where money just doesn't make it to where it's going, where it needs to go, where it's intended. I don't know if there's a great peel off. There's too many hands in the cookie jar. I don't know what the problem is. I'm not in city government or state government for that matter, so I don't really know. But you would think that if money would solve the problem, they would send money instead of troops. However, when you have demonstrators, rioters, protesters, Antifa, what have you, impeding ICE in their duties, obstructing ICE from exercising and doing what they're supposed, doing their job, ramming their ICE vehicles with other vehicles. That's not okay. That's law enforcement, and we all know that if you battle law enforcement, you're going to lose. Whether it's county sheriff department or city police, U.S. Marshals, the FBI, it doesn't matter. You're going to lose. So I don't think it's a wise idea. And yes, there are methods and ways to voice your opposition to that. I'm all for the Constitution. If I could turn our Constitution into a pillow, I'd sleep on top of it every night. That's how passionate I am about our Constitution. And freedom of speech, I get it. Stand on the sidewalk with your sign, megaphone, flip them the bird, but get out of the road. Don't try to get in their way. That's law enforcement, and whether you agree with it or not, they're going to win. You're not going to stop them. And you create enough problem. Well, now you're bringing more people into these cities to protect the federal buildings. So what'd you do really with all those acts of aggression and violence against the federal, those federal agents? You didn't do nothing. You just brought more people to town. So it seems pointless and moot. It really does. So I beg the people in the cities that the guard's getting called to stop. If ICE is doing raids in your city, but the guard hasn't been called up, don't engage ICE. Yes, you can let them know your displeasure and your disagreement. You can let your House rep, your federal House representative member, your state, your senators, you can let them know your disagreement and go about it that way. Put it online, put it on Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, whatever your platform is, YouTube. But don't harm law enforcement. And if you do, I would challenge the prosecuting attorneys and the judges to not be soft on that. We can't be soft on that. Even though it is federal, criminally federal, still those in the federal sector of from the attorney general, federal judges, all those people, please don't be soft on this. Don't, because we're not exactly, by being soft, you're not solving anything. I saw a story where one of these violent persons did get arrested, bonded out, and went right back. I mean, almost directly back to it, and re-engaged in the same behavior and activity. So it didn't solve anything. Now, some of these people might be soft enough to go, okay, I got arrested, I'm not doing this, and stay at home and not even go out there and protest verbally. Yeah, there might be some of those, but we can't have, we don't know from person to person who's going to do what if they're released. And I've been saying for a long time in our prosecutorial and judicial systems that we need to be a lot tougher on criminals. Even where I live in Southwest Florida, every week we've got the most wanted locally, and it's usually 3 people, and we don't have a whole lot of violent crime here. And I've seen people that have been arrested 12 times. I saw one person arrested 41 times. A few years ago, I saw somebody with more DUIs than they should have had without being scheduled for an extended stay in the jail. And I don't mean a year as an extended stay. So, okay, you've got 8 DUIs, 10 DUIs. Yeah, you need to spend some time contributing to our prison and jail system. You know, it didn't do anything. You take away the driver's license, or you put a transponder in there, and some of these people with the DUIs are just going to continue drinking and driving. They don't care. I grew up in and around Memphis, Tennessee, and I can't tell you how many people have a suspended driver's license there, or a revoked license for different reasons. And so taking away the license is not solving the problem. Extended stay, but even for offenses such as that, I think our penalties need to be a lot more severe than what they are, to be a deterrent from committing more crime or similar crime, repeat offenders. And we had the 3 strikes provision going, and 3 strikes you're going in for an extended stay. I think we need that. I think we need to increase our minimums, or certain crimes do mandatory maximums. We need to make our punishments a deterrent. We really, really do. Because we've gotten too soft in criminal punishment. I know criminal justice reform is a big thing. Well, we need to reform it in the other direction. We started letting people out. It's just like in California with the retail theft. They got to meet $900. So that's where you got all this organized crime. Everybody's just smashing and grabbing and running out. When you slap criminals on the wrist, it doesn't do anything. You just interrupted the flow of their day, is all you did. So we need to have a lot more no bail situations, especially on repeat offenders, regardless of what they're repeating, and have our minimums be a lot more stringent, and same as our maximums need to be a lot more stringent. So if you're squaring off with federal law enforcement, don't. But if you do, you deserve what's coming to you. You really do. There's a proper way to handle that. So I don't have sympathy on the people that are getting injured because they're squaring off with ICE and the National Guard and local police. The mayors of these cities are saying that the local police are not going to assist. You're exacerbating the problem. Don't be a dumbass. The federal government has authority everywhere. Yeah, I know there's certain provisions within state constitutions and the relationship between state and federal, but that only goes so far. It doesn't prevent the federal government from doing anything within your state in any capacity. They can do it if they want to. Just like the county sheriff can go everywhere in the county. They've got authority within the cities, but the city doesn't have authority outside of the city limits. So, and it bothers me that people think that this is a good way to voice their opinion and their displeasure, squaring off with law enforcement and hurting people. We can do better as a people, as a country, as a citizenry, and let's do that. City leaders, state leaders, let's take a long, hard look in the mirror of what we're actually doing. And yeah, I'm just going to leave that there because it irritates me knowing this. I don't want anybody to get hurt, whether it's a protester or a federal official or a cop. I don't want anybody to get hurt for any reason. But in some cases, we're doing it to ourselves from a leadership standpoint by not having the proper enforcement, by sending the wrong message. You got to lead by example. If you're, the top official in the state or the top official in your city, you got to lead by example. You set the tone and the direction of the culture within all of the departments you oversee. So it all comes back to you. That's the first rule in leadership. Everything's your fault. So leaders, you can do better. President Trump, I know he can do better, but like in his first term, I kept saying, man, if he would just shut his mouth. And now he's doing better about shutting his mouth, but he's still poking with all these damn memes and everything that he's doing. And I would expect the CEO of our country, the commander in chief, to have a little bit more decorum and a certain amount of reserve about him. Yeah, let all of us do all the memes and whatnot. We're good at it. That's today's political cartoons. Let us do it. There's no need for you to do that. I would rather you spend your time doing something else. So, another thing, the government shutdown. I've heard it called the Schumer shutdown. I've heard it called the Republican shutdown. We send 535 people we voted into office to make these hard decisions, to create a budget. And in my adult life, it seems that the government shutdowns come up a lot. What is it, 13 times in the past 10 years or something like that, or 8 years or something like that? It's a lot. And we already had it once this year that they passed a resolution that the Republicans are trying to, just pass as is, just say what we're currently doing. Let's just get that through for the next 7 weeks and give time to work on the rest of the appropriations. But the Democrats, aren't with that. I think they're 7 votes away. They need 7 Democrats to jump on board. Well, if our government, our elected officials on the budget could leave politics completely out of it, they might be able to get something done. Because I've said for years, the number one job for a congressperson is to get reelected, same as a senator. And it's bullshit. It shouldn't be that way, because that's what it seems like. And as the years go by, it seems like I'm asking myself, is there some type of directive or memorandum coming out of the DNC that all Democrat leaders, elected officials, state and federal, they have to follow a certain pre-written narrative and direction, and because that seems what they're doing, and it's wildly unpopular, but they're sticking to their guns on it. And I'm like, why? Let's make good business decisions and keep it from shutting down. But we're a week into it or somewhere around that, and still haven't made progress. So, all we're doing there, Congress, is we're finding out, the president's finding out who is essential and who's not, what departments are essential and what aren't. So Democrats, if your goal is to give the president and the Republicans ammunition, you're doing exactly that. And the Republicans, it's the same thing. Are y'all, do y'all have some type of uniform directive that y'all have to hold to? Yeah, theoretically, I understand what the Republican Party stands for. The Democrat Party, it's a little harder to pin down what they stand for, but I got my head kind of wrapped around it. And I understand, but in that particular dogma and principalities, but making those tough decisions, yeah, you might have to break rank with your party because it might make, because it just makes sense to do so. So, and that's what I mean by hard decisions. Yeah, your party might not like your decision, but you're there to benefit the American people, not to provide money to slush funds, kickbacks, or to posture to your base. You're there to make tough damn decisions. And with that, I've been saying it my entire adult life. If it's good enough for the president to have term limits, then by God, Congress needs term limits. We don't need people being there for 40 to 50 years. I heard somebody on YouTube, it was like last night or this morning, says something to the effect that those in government are kind of governing from, their generational, societal generation viewpoint. Like me, Gen X, there are certain ways that I look at things that is, common to Gen X rather than like my children. They were born in the late 90s and early 2000s. They look at things a little bit different. And when I tell them my viewpoint, my kids are like, it's hard for them to try to see it that way because they grew up in a different era than I did. So, there's different struggles and different societal norms. So if you got into Congress in the 80s, how effective are you today representing the mass populace about today's issues? I think your time's come and gone. It might be time to hang up the cleats, but I would like to see term limits. I've been saying it, and I know there's plenty of Americans that say it too. Term limits for Congress. Term limits for Congress. I would even entertain, a certain term of service to the Supreme Court, because when somebody is in poor health and still in the saddle, it actually breaks my heart. Why are they still working? I know they love what they do, but there comes a point in time in everybody's life we just got to sit down and just call it a day. Okay, I'm done. You might not like it. There's things that I don't do anymore that I used to do in my younger days that I would really enjoy doing, but I know I can't do them. It would hurt me more than it would pleasure me. So, that's why, at my age, I don't play contact sports. I don't play any sports anymore. So I don't play video games. I stopped doing that when I was, early teenage years. So, and the same thing with a career, whether you're in government service or not. It should be for a term of service, not lifelong career. And there's other financial structures for members of Congress that I've got ideas in my head that you can't use your office and your influence for paid gigs or books. If you want to do all that, you do that once you leave office, but not while you're in office. So, because it's supposed to be, it started out as citizenry volunteering for the position, and now it's just done gotten bloated, and people are there for 20, 30, 40 years, and which is way too damn long. It really is. And same, I don't want to put in, I'm not an ageist, so I don't want to put an age cap. So you can't be a Supreme Court justice past the age of 75, because some people are in poor health in 75, others are really good, whether it's physically, mental acuity, or both. Everybody's different at that age. So I'm like, okay, so what do we put a term limit of, say, 20 years on the Supreme Court? What does Congress look like? Do we need to do a 12-year cap for senators and for House of Representatives? Because one is 6 years and the other one's 2 years. I'm like, that's too much. There's too much time spent trying to get reelected in the House, because you get into the office, you go a year, then you start working on, you got to start collecting money to fund your campaign for reelection. So if we could, just do everybody at 6-year term with one reelection, give us 12 years, and we offset those half and by 50%, House and Senate, election times. Same with the presidency. So maybe that'll help get, because I'd like to see a lot more fresh blood come into Congress, younger generation, Gen X, maybe the generation just below me. Everyday people, professionals, doesn't matter, whoever can run a campaign and win the election for whatever they're running for. But the shutdown, that really pisses me off. It really does. I know they can pass a budget, and there's usually wish list arguments that prevent it, that prevent a budget from getting passed, which is based off of ideological dogma within each party. And that's where the politics needs to stop. Yeah. Well, let's take care of the essentials in the budget. If you've got a wish list, put it on a bill, bring it to the floor, and let's have a vote on its own merit. I support clean bills, single issue clean bills. Whatever this bill is, let's say it's for infrastructure, highways and bridges. We can't put foreign aid in there. We can't put anything else, anything roads and bridges, and strengthen the oversight to make sure that money gets to the end user, that 70% of it isn't peeled off on the way to the contractors. So that's another problem. I know that DOJ is looking into all that kind of stuff with the NGOs and what have you. But the shutdown does not need to happen. It does not. And I challenge all of our elected leaders to do a better damn job. That's what you're there for, to make the tough decisions. I was talking with a client on the phone last night, and we were going over some financial things, and they were expressing their woes about certain financial products. And of course, I agreed with just about everything they were saying. And I'm like, you know what? This is why I would not make a good politician, because I would piss too many people off. I would, because the way a lot of finance works today it's helpful, but it's hurtful, because now that we've gotten fully entrenched in a credit payment based society on a monthly basis, the amateurization is painful. I was doing some amateurization figures today, and I'm like, wow, paying at a certain percentage of interest at X many years terms. I was just doing some investigating just to see where things were landing at before I got to more complicated finance structures. Just a basic mortgage interest, and I'm like, wow. So I was like 5%, 5.25% at 800,000 by 30 years. Well, you end up paying double. I'm like, that's wild. That is wild. So the interest is creating an issue. Maybe we change the algo on how the amortization for the mortgages works, and maybe into the commercial investment too, with the interest only loans. Because I know a few years ago we had a big scare about certain classes of commercial assets were going to be problematic because interest rates were going to be resetting, and notes are being called due, and it just didn't fit financial models for the ownership of properties, and they were going to have to walk away. The bank doesn't want the property, so I'm like, maybe we need to do credit interest reform. Instead, let's take a look at that. I think that'd be a good thing. I know there are certain people that are working on, health insurance, auto insurance, property taxes, trying to drive that down. But amortized interest rates, no matter what it's being used for, maybe we look at that to help improve, people's cash flow positions without, putting banks out of business too. Maybe we need to refigure that and see if we can't come up with something that would help those that are looking for outside capital to make different types of purchases, whether it's vehicles or watercraft, homes, investment properties, commercial or residential. Because cost of capital keeps coming up in conversations with some of my clients, and I'm like, yeah, I get it. I do. The struggle's real. And when I run financial models, I'm like, man, shit just doesn't make sense. It doesn't. And not everybody is in a position to pay cash for their investments. There's a lot of people that use that outside capital to keep their liquidity so they can, manage what they have and also make other investments. But if you lock up all your cash in a particular investment, then you've got nothing to go forward with. Then you end up having a mortgage against it anyways, and then you didn't do anything. You could have just took out some type of loan in the beginning rather than doing a cash acquisition. So, yeah, the truth for the day is those that are FA and FO with the ICE agents in numerous cities across the country, just don't. Stop, please. Be better. I know, America, you are better than that. I know you're emotional. I know you're angry, but that's not how you do it. That is not how you do it. Don't get yourself in trouble. Don't get yourself hurt. Don't get in their way. Let them do what they do. And the battle, you fight that in Congress. You do. Petition, notify your representatives. That's how you go about it. So if anybody's got any thoughts, let me know. Drop them below. For This Truth, I'm Alan Printup. Until next time, be well.